Hi there, my name is Linda, and I am planning to go around the world in 80 days, vicariously speaking, by reading some books about the countries that are mentioned in the book Around the World in 80 Days. And no, this is not my idea. I got this idea from Miriam Elizabeth Reads, another booktuber who set up this challenge, and she made Around the World in 80 Days the group read for the challenge. And apparently we're supposed to read all these books in 80 days, and I think I'm going to have a hard time doing that, but I would like to read all the books whether I do it in 80 days or not. Might as well give it the try. I'm not good at speed reading, that is for sure, and I have other goals that I want to achieve at the same time, so it's not like I can clear my schedule and do just these books. But here's the plan that I've set up for myself. I have chosen some books to represent all the countries that were visited by the main character in Around the World in 80 Days. By the way, I've already read that one. I read Around the World in 80 Days and finished it about a week ago. It was just fantastic. It's by Jules Verne, and a man living in England goes to a men's club regularly, and there was a newspaper article saying that it's now possible to go around the world in 80 days. So he said he would take up the challenge and go do it. And he took his servant, and they just set off. And I don't want to give any spoilers, so there's not very much I can say about it, except great book by Jules Verne. It's not very long, well worth reading at least once in your lifetime. So the first country they were in was England, because that's where he was living. And so to read a book about England, I already read in January the classic novel Middlemarch by George Eliot. Thank you to Faith of Faith in Books for buddy reading that with me, because I don't think I would have gotten through it without a buddy reading partner. It wasn't exactly an easy novel to read. Basically, I think the worst thing about the novel is that it's very, very long. And so depending on what publisher you choose, it's anywhere from 600 to 900 pages, and that's kind of long for me. But I started out at two chapters daily, and then I increased to 3 chapters daily so I could get through it before the end of the month. And then at the end, it got so exciting I couldn't put it down, and so it was a pretty good book. I enjoyed it. The next country that the main character of Around the World in 80 Days visited was France, and I had a classic book planned to read in 2023, and that book is Madame Bovary, set in France, by Gustave Flaubert. It was published in 1856, and I wrote I captured a few sentences from Goodreads to describe each of the books that I'm not very well familiar with. This one says, a woman lives beyond her means in order to escape the banalities and emptiness of provincial life. So, very controversial book when it was first published, and now it is a classic. So, the next book that is also on my list of classics, but not in the video that I published here about a week ago. Okay, Italy is the next country to visit by reading a book set in it, and I have chosen to read Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Now, I may have read this when I was a teenager. I remember the movie came out when I was a teenager, and I just loved that movie, and I watched it multiple times, and I probably read Romeo and Juliet at the time, but I don't really remember, so this time I will remember. In fact, I'll probably write a review of it at Goodreads. Every book that I've been reading for the last year at least, and then some, has been reviewed at Goodreads. It has become a habit for me now. As soon as I finish a book, I write the review. And the next country visited in the book of Around the World in 80 Days is Egypt. And wouldn't you know it, there's a book that I already own an audiobook copy of. In fact, I got this audiobook free at Audible because I'm a subscriber there. And it fulfills a goal for me because I'm a Newbery completist wannabe, and it was a 1962 Newbery Honor book. It is The Golden Goblet by Eloise, Jarvis, McGraw. I read another Eloise, Jarvis, McGraw a year or two ago. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So this one is set in Egypt. It's about a young boy, I think, called Ranofer. It says Ranofer struggles to thwart the plottings of his evil brother Gabu, so he can become master goldsmith like their father in this exciting tale of ancient Egyptian mystery and intrigue. The next country is Yemen, and unfortunately, it's hard to find a novel set in Yemen. There is one that I could find that was written, but I don't think it's translated into English, so I'm going to do exactly what Miriam Elizabeth is going to do, and that is that I'm going to use Around the World in 80 Days as my book for Yemen. And I've already read it, so it works out great for me. Okay, the next country he visited is India. And I'm going to put on my list of classics that I need to read this year, A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. It was published in 1924. And I've been wanting to read it for quite a long time, so this is the perfect opportunity. It says, a masterful portrait of a society in the grip of imperialism, A Passage to India compellingly depicts the fate of individuals caught between the great political and cultural conflicts of the modern world. So I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, and should be interesting. It's been a while since I've read a good novel about India. The next one I would like to read, it has to come from the country of Singapore. And unfortunately, I've already read Crazy Rich Asians. And when I bought it, I bought the boxed set of 3. There were 2 sequels that came with it, and unfortunately all of that burned in the forest fire that ate my home 2 years ago. So, alternative, I just don't have the heart to buy that boxed set again. It was kind of expensive when I bought it, and I don't have that much enthusiasm about reading the 2 sequels. But the original, the Crazy Rich Asians book, was pretty good. I recommend that. So for Singapore, I have decided to read a book called How We Disappeared by Jing-Jing Lee, published in 2019. It is a World War II novel set in Singapore as Japanese troops sweep down Malaysia and into Singapore. A village is ransacked, leaving only 2 survivors and 1 tiny child. They are kidnapped and taken to a Japanese military brothel. So, sounds like an important topic to know more about if you care about things like that. And on all the list of Singapore books that I examined, it was the only one I really wanted to read. So the next country that I will be reading about is China, and I have chosen to read another classic published in 1925, The Painted Veil by W. Somerset Maugham. It says it's about the love-starved Kitty Fane. When her husband discovers her adulterous affair, he forces her to accompany him to the heart of a cholera epidemic. The Painted Veil is a beautifully written affirmation of the human capacity to grow, to change, and to forgive. And I don't know, the cholera epidemic just sounds like he was trying to kill her. But we'll see. I know there's a movie out. I haven't seen it. So the next country I need to read a book about is Japan, and I'm going to go back to a book that I was going to read a long time ago, and I started it. I don't know how far I got into it, but not very far. Apparently, I still have this book. It survived the fire somehow. I don't know how. It was in a box or something and was not burned. So it was published in 1987. It's Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Norwegian Wood brilliantly recaptures a young man's first hopeless and heroic love. The next country that was visited in Around the World in 80 Days is the United States. And fortunately for me, I do tend to read a lot of USA books because I live here. Maybe that's part of it right there. And I read a book in January that qualifies, and it is The Indigo Girl by Natasha Boyd. It's a book about a woman living in the 1700s in South Carolina, and she starts an indigo farm. It's actually a historical novel based on a real person who lived there and started the indigo industry in South Carolina. The next country we are to visit is Ireland, and I'm already reading a book now. It's not a novel, it's nonfiction, but it's Ireland, and it's Braving the Thin Places, Celtic Wisdom to Create a Space for Grace. And what it is basically a book about Irish Christianity for the most part. And I actually got that book from NetGalley. It's recently published, and I think the cover is beautiful. It's green, and I'm part Irish, and so we just came together, and I think I've learned more about Irish culture from this particular book than from almost any other thing that I've ever read, and I'm about halfway done with it right now. So that is my plan for Around the World in 80 Days, and thank you, Miriam Elizabeth, for coming up with this amazing idea. I think she has a co-host. I'm not sure who it is because I only watched her video, so sorry about that. I'll put more information about it in the description of this video on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to me. Come again, and maybe I'll have something else to say real soon here, because I think this is a great night for recording videos, and I've got a couple more that I really need to record right now. So until I talk to you later, thanks for visiting.